Assalomu alaykum. Assalomu alaykum aziz tadbirkorlar, azizlar. Rab ijtimoiy standartlar va xavfsizlik mezonlaridan muvoffiqligini sertifikatlash seminariga xush kelibsiz. Ismim Shohrux Qayumov, men bugun moderatorlik qilaman. Zoom orqali Amerikadan qo'shilib turgan aziz ishtirokchilarga kattakon minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. Kattakon rahmat, vaqt ajratib kirganingiz uchun. Kirish so'zini O'zbekiston Respublikasi Savdo-sanoat palatasi raisi Davron Abdujalolovich Vahobovga beramiz.
Assalomu alaykum hurmatli tadbirkorlar. Assalomu alaykum qo'shma Amerika shtatlaridan barcha mas'ul idoralar bizani bugungi kunda to'qimachilik sohasiga e'tibor qaratayotgan va butun dunyoni brendlari bilan birga hamkorlikda ishlash uchun shunday maydonchani shakllantirish uchun Amerika elchixonasiga o'z minnatdorchiligimizni bildiramiz. So'nggi yillarda O'zbekiston to'qimachilik sanoati mamlakatimizning iqtisodiy jadal rivojlanayotgan tarmoqlardan biriga aylandi. Mazkur sanoat xorijiy investitsiyalarni jalb qilish, aholi bandligini ta'minlash, mahsulot eksport qilishda yetakchi o'rinlarni egallab, mamlakatimiz milliy iqtisodiyotni rivojlantirishning strategik muhim yo'nalishlaridan biri hisoblanadi. O'zbekiston to'qimachilik mahsulotlarini tashqi bozorlarga eksport qilish ko'rsatkichlari sezilarli darajada oshdi. Jumladan 2021-yil 2 milliard 600 million dollar qiymatga to'qimachilik mahsulotlarini eksport qilindi va ushbu ko'rsatkich o'tgan yilga nisbatan 18% ga oshdi. Mamlakatimizning to'qimachilik korxonalarining roli ijtimoiy nuqtai nazardan ham oshdi. Xususan bugungi kunda ushbu tarmoq korxonalarida 500 mingdan ortiq kishi mehnat qilmoqda. To'qimachilik korxonalarini esa yaratilayotgan ish o'rinlari soni bo'yicha yetakchi va ish beruvchi bo'lib qolmoqda. Yevropa ittifoqi bilan to'qimachilik protokolini ratifikatsiya qilish, shuningdek O'zbekiston Yevropa ittifoqi davlatlari to'qimachilik mahsulotlarini bojsiz eksport qilish imkoniyati beruvchi GSP+ preferensial tizimiga qo'shilishi O'zbekistonning to'qimachilik sanoatiga isloh qilishdagi muhim qadami hisoblandi. Bu esa o'z navbatida o'zbek to'qimachilik mahsulotlarini eksport qilish va geografiyasini oshirish imkonini beryapti. Shu bilan birga Amerika bozori to'qimachilik tarmog'idagi ishlab chiqaruvchilarning uchun eng jozibador, ammo shu bilan bir qatorda xalqaro standartlar va mahsulot sifatini sertifikatlash shartlarining muvofiqligi, shuningdek munosib mehnatning asosiy standartlariga muvofiqlik nuqtai nazaridan egallash oson bo'lmagan bozor hisoblanadi. Shunga muvofiq ta'kidlash mumkinki, o'zbek korxonalarining eksport salohiyati AQSh bozorida hali ham to'liq oshirilmagan. Yuqoridagilardan inobatga olgan holda aytib o'tish lozimki, to'qimachilik korxonalarini ishlab chiqarish sharoitlarida xavfsizlik va mehnatni muhofaza qilishga AQSh va butun dunyo e'tirof etilgan xalqaro standartlarga muvofiqligi sertifikatlash sohasiga ixtisoslangan VRAP tashkilotining roli yuqori. Mamnuniyat bilan qayd etmoqchimanki, bugungi kunda O'zbekistonning 100 ga yaqin yirik ishlab chiqaruvchilari va tayyor to'qimachilik mahsulotlarining eksportchilari ushbu seminarda onlayn va offlayn rejimda ishtirok etmoqda. Seminar doirasida sertifikatlashtirish shartlari va talablari, shuningdek sertifikatga ega bo'lishning afzalliklari, yoritib berilgan VRAP sertifikatlash bo'yicha taqdimotini tinglaymiz. Umid qilamanki, birgalikda sa'y harakatlarimiz bilan O'zbekiston va AQSh o'rtasidagi savdo-iqtisodiy aloqalarni mustahkamlashga, o'z hissasini qo'shish bilan birga to'qimachilik tarmog'ida o'zbek ishlab chiqaruvchilari uchun yangi imkoniyatlar eshigi ochadi hamda Amerika va boshqa xorijiy bozorlarga o'z mahsulotlarini eksport hajmini oshirishga imkon beradi. Fursatdan foydalanib O'zbekiston Respublikasining AQShdagi elchixonasi, shuningdek VRAP jamoasiga bugungi tadbirda mezbonlik qilganliklari uchun minnatdorchilik bildirib, seminarning barcha ishtirokchilariga muvaffaqiyat tilayman. E'tiboringiz uchun rahmat.
Kattakon rahmat. Keyingi kirish so'zini O'zbekistondagi O'zbekistonning AQShdagi favqulodda va muxtor elchisi Javlon Abdujalolovich Vahobovga beramiz.
Assalomu alaykum, hurmatli yig'ilish qatnashchilari. Ruxsat bersangiz, Amerikadagi hamkorlarimizni minnatdorchilik so'zlari bilan ham qutlab qo'ysam. Hello everyone. I would like first to thank Mr. Abedi Safarian, President of RAP, and his team for their willingness to support and enlighten our textile industry and our many textile companies across Uzbekistan who would like to unleash their potential and explore global markets. I hope this webinar will be the first among many others to better understand the ways how to reach environmental, social and governance goals and ensure transparency and sustainability throughout the supply chain in Uzbekistan textile industry. And I'm confident that this webinar will be helpful to our industry in their aspirations to get an access to American and other Western markets. And I wish you all very productive webinar. Yana bir bor kattakon rahmat e'tiboringiz uchun. Fursatdan foydalanib O'zbekiston Savdo-sanoat palatasi rahbariyati va jamoasiga ham o'z minnatdorchiligimni bildirib qo'ymoqchi edim. O'ylaymanki, bugungi tadbir Amerika bozoriga kirish uchun qo'yilayotgan talablarni yanada chuqurroq tushunishga yordam beradi va shu talab etilayotgan sertifikat va standartlarga muvofiq, demak, O'zbekiston tekstil mahsulotlarini AQSh va boshqa xorijiy bozorlarga olib kirishiga xizmat qiladi deb o'ylayman. Yana bir bor katta rahmat e'tiboringiz uchun.
Lütfen Javlon Abdujalolovich, agar siz keyingi so'zni mehmonlarimizga bersangiz va tanishtirib.
Mr. Safarian, I'm just passing the floor over to you. It would be great if you could introduce yourself and your entire team, and then you may turn to the webinar.
Wonderful. Well, assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Your Excellency, and thank you to all the organizers in Tashkent, to the Chamber of Commerce and the members of industry, to all of you who've made time to be with us today, afternoon for you, morning for us here in the US. We're very excited to be part of this conversation, the first of hopefully many engaging dialogues we will have with the Uzbek industry in the mission of advancing the marketability, the profitability, the success of this industry, which, as the chairperson of the Chamber of Commerce pointed out, is a very important one for Uzbekistan, both in terms of its economic impact as well as the social impact for the 5 million people employed and the value it brings to Uzbek society and to the world supply chain. We have a PowerPoint presentation that I am going to now share with you, but I want you all to know in advance that the slides have been given to the organizers and will be available to all of you participating. So please don't feel like you have to take screenshots or notes. It will be available to all of you at the end of the event. What we are here to do is talk to you about social compliance. Give you an overview of this topic, which again, as the opening remarks made clear, is an increasingly important part of being competitive in the world market today, and also use the opportunity to give you a quick introduction to RAP, a social compliance certification organization, and in fact, the largest such independent certification program for this industry. What I'm going to do is very briefly tell you what our agenda is, and you'll hear over the course of the next several minutes from myself and several of my colleagues. And of course, we'll be happy to answer questions at the end. So please feel free to either type them in the chat or save them for that session. But of course, we're also available to you at any time after this presentation for further conversations. So I'll give you again a very quick overview of RAP, the organization. And then we will have a colleague talk to you a little bit about the buyer's perspective Ultimately, as mentioned, one of the reasons why this is so important is because you will not be able to engage with Western buyers, with US buyers, if you're not able to show a RAP certificate, to show social compliance standards. And so we'll talk a little bit about what is it that they're looking for and why it matters to you. We will also talk to you a little bit about the larger landscape. RAP is the biggest program out there, and obviously we think it is the best, but we're not the only ones. But it is important for you to understand what the various different programs actually represent, and how RAP compares, and what are the differences, and what are some of the choices you will have to make with regards to where you will invest and how you will demonstrate your compliance. We'll also have a little bit detail given to you about the certification process itself, to give you a sense of what that involves and how you will go about it. And then broaden the lens a little bit to look at the larger global landscape with regards to due diligence, with regards to making sure that you are able to validate your processes in order to be effective vendors, effective competitors in the global supply chain. I will return to provide some final remarks and talk a little bit about next steps. And then, as mentioned, we will be available for you for questions. So, a quick overview of RAP. As I mentioned, we are the world's largest independent factory-based social compliance certification program that's focused on this industry, apparel, footwear, so on products. We are expanding to related sectors, and we are moving further upstream in the supply chain. One of the advantages that Uzbekistan presents to the world is that you are going to position yourself as a vertical supply chain. And so we are able to also certify and validate practices in upper tier facilities, mills, laundries, dye houses, and the like. So very important to have the supply chain be validated as much as possible. Our industry focus is limited to apparel and related sectors, but our geographic scope is unlimited. The W stands for worldwide. We inspect and certify factories all over the world, and are very excited to be adding Uzbekistan to that list of countries, hopefully in the very near future. The way we describe ourselves at RAP is as an objective, non-profit team of global social compliance experts. That's who we are. And what we do is promote safe, lawful, humane, and ethical manufacturing throughout the world. That's our mission. Again, as the opening remarks made clear, it's very important for supply chains to validate health and safety practices, labor practices, compliance with laws in working factories, and that's kind of our mission, to independently validate that practice. And we do this through certification. That's the core offering, the inspection of factories and the certificate that the factories can then show their prospective buyers to validate those conditions, and education. It is important that factories understand why these things matter and how they can go about achieving that. And that is a role that we are mission bound to provide. And of course, we're very grateful to opportunities like this one. And thank you once again to all the organizers for giving us this chance to engage with you today. One of the things that distinguishes RAP from all the other organizations, the nonprofits in this space, is that we very deliberately position ourselves as a program of choice for industry. We understand that it is in the power of the factories, the associations, the buyers, to really drive working conditions. And we feel that the best way to make those improvements is not to target them and engage in naming and shaming campaigns or otherwise treat industry as a negative force, but rather to work together, to engage, and to understand the power that they have and the ability that they can wield through enlightened self-interest to make those improvements themselves for the benefit of the workers and for the benefit of the owners of the factories and the industry and the economy and the larger supply chain at large. So we work with industry associations. We're very proud to be engaged with you today. And as an example, on the buyer side, we are the program of choice for the apparel industry here in the United States. The apex trade body for the buyers here is called the AAFA, the American Apparel and Footwear Association, and RAP is the official corporate social responsibility partner, CSR partner of the AAFA. Just to give you a sense of that W standing for worldwide, I wanted to show this map to tell you that we are headquartered in the Washington, D.C. area in Arlington, Virginia. That's where I'm speaking to you from today. We have offices in Hong Kong, as well as in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and also full-time staff located in various places around the world, in India, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Europe. You'll be hearing from our European colleagues shortly, as well as for Latin America. So we are very well positioned throughout the world to service factories wherever they may be located. I mentioned already the importance and value we place on partnerships, particularly with trade associations, and repeating here the fact that RAP is AAFA's official CSR partner. As mentioned, they are the largest brand association in the US. Over 1,000 brands are represented in the AAFA membership. We work with them to issue joint publications, to issue guidance to industry. This includes, for example, the AAFA adopting RAP's approach to working hours as the industry best practice, as well as on a topic very important currently and one that obviously is relevant to this dialogue. We have a joint industry guidance with them on understanding and eradicating forced labor in the supply chain. You will hear a little bit later about the RAP process. At this level, I just wanted to share at the very high level the 12 principles, the topics that are core to the RAP program. I will not go into each one of these in detail, but just to point out that they cover the core universally recognized minimum standards that we want to see in applied supply chains around the world. They're drawn from the ILO conventions, the International Labour Organization conventions, and also have some additional value add propositions with regards to touching upon environmental topics, plus also for exporting units, customs compliance and security issues, which is especially relevant for those of you wishing to export to the United States, for example. And we'll talk a little bit more about the value of that as we proceed. One final thing I will leave you with before handing over to a colleague is just some numbers to back up our claim that we are the world's largest independent certification program. Last year, which was still a COVID recovery year, we received just under 3,200 applications, 3,197 to be exact. And these are the top 10 countries from which we had applications. No surprise that they follow the top apparel exporting countries around the world. We hope to see Uzbekistan climbing on that list in the near future. Right now, in the sort of end of the third quarter of this year, there are just about 3,200 factories that currently hold a RAP certificate, spread out in about 40 countries around the world, altogether employing 3.1 million workers. So that really speaks to a very large footprint that we have at RAP, and that we're very proud of. And that's all I will leave you with regards to a big overview of the organization. I'll now invite my colleague, Mark Jager, who is RAP's Vice President of Stakeholder Engagement, to take over the presentation and give you a buyer's perspective.
Thank you very much, Avidis, and good afternoon. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Uzbek textile industry. As Avidis mentioned, my background really is from the buyer perspective. I worked almost 25 years for a large apparel company based in the United States that imported products from around the world, from many, many countries. And one of the, in that role, I also ran the compliance program for this company. And we had a very straightforward requirement. All of the factories we source from would be RAP certified. And we did that for a couple of reasons, and I'll cover those here. So basically, why did we insist on RAP certification? First, RAP is both an audit program and a certification program. So we conduct an audit against the RAP 12 principles, and then RAP independently makes a determination if the principles have been met and a certification is issued. Other programs, and we'll talk in a little bit more detail later, are audit-only programs, and you do not get the benefit of a third-party certification that you're meeting the social standards. I liked RAP because it was cost-effective. It was a pragmatic approach to the social compliance problem or challenge. The fee to have a registration with RAP is $1,195 US. When there is an audit from a RAP accredited monitoring firm, there is the man-day fee that's also paid, but that fee is common with any program. So the fees we felt were reasonable. RAP as a third-party player in the space is credible. It's been doing this work for 20 plus years, and it's built up a very strong global reputation that's relied on by many stakeholders. I also appreciated the clear requirements that RAP spells out on its website and the no charge for preparatory materials that will help you understand what the audit will focus on. In addition, RAP has in-house training expertise, and oftentimes that training can be at little or no charge for groups of facilities in countries that are interested in pursuing a RAP certification. From the facility perspective, having a RAP certification allows you to show not one buyer, but many buyers in different geographies that you've met an international standard. This ideally reduces the request by individual buyers to have separate audits of your facilities. And we fight that battle every day, and we've been fighting it for 20 years. We think there should be just one audit, one certification, not many. So minimizing audit fatigue is an important aspect of the RAP program. And as my colleague Gerwin will talk about a little bit later, RAP now aligns very well with the mandatory human rights due diligence trend that we're seeing across the globe. Abadis, if we could go to the next slide. So I mentioned when I worked for a major brand, we required RAP, but here's a list and an example of brands that not only accept RAP, but in some cases require or insist on RAP as their compliance solution. The very first company on the left that you can see is Walmart. We have a special relationship with Walmart that's been earned, not given. We've worked with Walmart for a long period of time. Now they recognize several programs, but they also recognize RAP. And in addition to recognizing RAP for social compliance certification, they recognize RAP for security of the supply chain. In the US, there's a program managed by the Customs and Border Patrol called CTPAT. And this is something which most buyers and importers sign up for and follow. And many times it requires an additional audit. Walmart has approved RAP for both one audit for two reasons, social responsibility and also supply chain security. I won't mention every one of these buyers, but you're familiar, I'm sure, with Costco, also a major buyer. What's interesting about Costco, not only do they accept RAP for the goods they carry, for their private label brand called Kirkland, they insist on RAP for the apparel products. So they've grown to really rely on the value of the RAP certification. So as you can see, there are a number of brands in the United States that rely on or accept the RAP certification. Next slide, please. And there are other social compliance programs, and here they are. Not just RAP, but some of these you might have heard from, or may already have worked with, or may already in fact be certified from. In fact, it's a fairly confusing landscape. So one of the benefits of this session today is to provide you a little bit of background on what RAP is and how RAP works and how it compares to these other programs. For example, we have a chart here that identifies some of the important features of a social compliance program, and they're all listed on the left side. And I won't read through all of these, but they establish, the important benefits of a program that you should, we believe, look at when making a decision. And across the top are different program models. I mentioned RAP is a certification and audit program. There are some programs that also do certification and audits, some that do audit-only programs. An example might be SEDEX or Amfori. Some are audit sharing programs. An example might be SLCP, Social Labor Convergence Project. And there are some buyers and brands that are still doing their own internal audits on their own internal standards. When you look at which of these models meet most or all of these important features, the result is clear. RAP checks every box and the other models do not. And we can certainly, amplify on each of these points, but I think the message is clear from just looking at the visual for the slide. Thank you, Avidis. So another way to look at how RAP is positioned in the landscape of social compliance programs is to look at this chart. And it will just take a moment for me to give you a little bit of orientation, and then I think you'll see clearly what we're bringing across from this chart. In our x-axis, there's a range on the left where there's no due diligence and no program. If you don't do anything, you may not be able to sell, but you certainly won't spend any money on social compliance. On the far end of the right side of the x-axis are approaches where you get the best third-party audits and certifications, but you also do consulting, training, capacity building, and investment into facilities. There are some buyers that are at this extreme. And then on the y-axis, at the very bottom, there are approaches by facilities or buyers that have no code of conduct and don't pay attention to the space at all. And at the top of the y-axis is an example of the international standards and guidelines that are out there and that programs align to. And then on the diagonal line, you see dollar signs. And basically the concept is if you're in the bottom left and you have no due diligence and no code of conduct, you don't spend anything on your program. And if you try to follow all the international guidelines and do all of the investing and support for a facility, you spend quite a bit of money. So where does RAP fit on this model? There you go. RAP, we think, hits the sweet spot. RAP, as you can see on the x-axis, is above the third-party audit and certification line. So we're not doing all the consultation and capacity building that you might see in certain programs, but we're certainly doing more than a simple audit or an audit exchange. And RAP 12 principles have intentionally remained aligned to international guidelines and standards and meet the highest expectations in this space. So we think RAP is very well positioned for export-oriented industries like the Uzbek industry. And I believe that's my last slide, and I'd like to turn the presentation over to my colleague now, and I believe it's Hong Mei. Hong?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So next, I will walk through the RAP certification process. There are 6 major steps. The first one is to register with RAP. We call it application. And Avidis mentioned earlier that we had a little bit over 3,200 applications. So that's the first step. And the second step, after you register with us online, is the pre-audit self-assessment. My colleague Mark mentioned earlier that we provide all the free materials for factories to review, to get ready for the audit. And this is the process. You download the pre-audit self-assessment and you look at the self-assessment and see how you can get ready for the audit. And then the next step is monitoring. This is an announced audit. So during the monitoring process or the audit process, auditors would walk through the facility floor, audit facility tour. They would also interview workers. They would interview management. And during the audit, they review various documents. So those are the major processes during an audit, during a monitoring. And next, after a facility passes the audit, then a report is produced and submitted to RAP for RAP to review. There are 2 steps to review, internal staff review, and then we have a review board to review the report and approve it. After they do that, we certify a facility, and that's certification. We issue the certification to the facility. And the last step is we select about 25% of the facilities to do what we call post-certification assessments. So those are the certification process. And you may wonder who would go to do the audits. So we call our audit, the people, the third parties who do our audits, monitoring partners. So the way we select and control them is that we first accredit the monitoring firms, the companies at the organizational level. And then we accredit each individual auditors. So these auditors go through our 5-day lead auditor training. And every other year, they go through our refresher training. So they would have to stay afresh with the new information, new requirements from RAP. In addition to the trainings, we also do office visits or review audit files or do shadow audits. Our own staff, Abidis mentioned, we have offices worldwide. Our own staff would also do unannounced visits to certified facilities to check on these auditors as well as these facilities. So in addition to this, RAP also is a big supporter of APSCA. That stands for Association of Professional Social Compliance Auditors. So this is a professional organization monitoring all the auditors. So we support them, we support their work, and we follow their guidelines. Abidis, next slide, please. I think this is the, pass it on to Herwin.
So before we pass it on to our colleague who's RAP's Europe representatives, just a couple of words with regards to some of the activities that Hong described. And Hong is our Senior Director of Compliance Assurance. She manages the integrity of our audit program. Talk a little bit about some best practices that you want to start thinking about even as you begin to lay the foundation for a socially responsible supply chain in Uzbekistan. We want to be very clear that this is a piece of a larger puzzle, right? You want social compliance systems to be part of your daily operations, but you want it to be done in a way that integrates it with the general management of your facilities. It should not be a standalone operation that, you know, the GM is not paying attention to or the owners are not particularly engaged with. It has to be part and parcel of the way you do things collectively, just like you embed quality systems into general management, just like you embed everything else in that approach for it to be truly successful. And in this day and age, one of the things that you absolutely have to understand is that it is not simply a matter of the factory talking to the buyer, and that's the only place that the conversation about social responsibility is happening. This is a much larger dialogue today that involves engaging with all stakeholders, your employees, your buyers, your government, various activist organizations around the world, sometimes, unfortunately, the press, media. So you have to engage in these collective conversations. And to do that, it is going to be very important to foster trust. It is going to be very important to have that transparency that you can speak with in a way that people will believe what you say, which is where that independent certification becomes so valuable. The credibility you get from showing a buyer or any stakeholder a RAP certificate is vastly different from simply saying to them, I do a good job, I have a clean factory, trust me. You know, you probably do, and you probably are telling the truth. But for someone to take what you say about your own operations is very different from someone saying, you don't have to trust me, here's an independent validation that says what I'm trying to say. So that's the value very much of the kind of thing that a RAP certificate would get you. The final point to make with regards to best practice is that you have to understand that auditing all the activities that Hong just described is very essential to this. Obviously, we have to identify practices on the ground, but it is fundamentally just the base of the process. An audit is going to tell you where things need to be improved in the factory. An audit is going to tell you where are the opportunities for you to take your operations to the next level. It's up to you to then take those steps. It's up to you to engage with your own management, to engage with your buyers, to engage with other stakeholders, to drive the improvement that an audit will identify as being something that you might want to consider. In the end, the audit is the beginning, not the final part of the journey. It's an ongoing journey that's all about continuously improving and making yourself better and better and more competitive and more profitable as a result. For all of this, the fundamental thing that you require is continuous education, which is why, again, we are so honored, so grateful to all of you who are taking time out of your afternoon to be with us and learn a little bit about this and hopefully share this with your own colleagues. So with that sort of as the internal look at operations and best practices, let's broaden the lens a little bit and look at sort of global due diligence practices. And for that, we will turn to RAP's representative in Europe, based in Hamburg, Gerwin Lepink. Gerwin.
Thank you very much, Avadis, and welcome everybody. It's a great honor to speak here to you all. The industry in Uzbekistan. A little bit about myself, as Avadis is telling. I'm Dutch, I'm living in Germany, I'm speaking European languages, and my English is not as fluent as from Avadis and Mark, but I will do my very best. I'm 30 years in this business. I'm a sourcing executive. I've traveled the whole world. But unfortunately, I never finished up in Uzbekistan. The closest I came was Kyrgyzstan, and I see a lot of benefits also from a sourcing perspective in your countries. Let's have a look at global due diligence laws and regulations, because exporting means doing business with companies subject to own local laws and regulations. So as soon you start exporting to the US or to Europe, you directly or indirectly are involved in legislations and laws in those countries. If we look at different flavors, different types, there are hard laws, soft laws, and independent programs. Independent programs, RAP is one, Mark mentioned BSCI is one, SEDEX is one, all standards based on hard laws and soft laws. Hard laws, that's very clear, legal obligations of a formally binding nature. Hard laws will be enforced by authorities. Soft laws that are all recommendations, resolutions, conventions, for example ILO, guidelines and declarations stipulated by international organizations. If we look at these hard laws, we see two broad types. One in the United Kingdom, the Modern Slavery Act from 2015, and we still say here emerging mandatory human rights due diligence regulations. This is already law in Germany and will become effective the 1st of January 2023. The EU directive for human rights due diligence is in the works, and this will progress, and we will see definitely next year some more information around that. These laws are a reporting obligation in the UK. Not too much will be verified by the government in the UK, very differently in Germany. There is a special authority who will really verify the reports of the companies they have to submit about their actions, their own actions in their own enterprise and own business area, but also the action of direct suppliers and indirect suppliers. So we see here immediately the bridge it might be legislation outside Uzbekistan, but if you export to these countries, you automatically are involved in that system of due diligence legislation. Last point, in addition, enforcement of other trade laws. One to mention is, of course, the World Trade Organization agreements. Next slide, please, Abadis. As mentioned, soft laws are typically embedded in conventions and guidance issued by multinational organizations like the UN, also the ILO and the OECD. And we see that soft law can be equally important as hard law. Uzbekistan understands this very well because you ratified in 2019 the ILO Convention for Forced Labor, and that made a big step forwards in the opportunities you have to export to the US and to Europe. Of course, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Uzbekistan is a member of the United Nations, UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, OECD Due Diligence Guidance for Responsible Business Conduct, and also here, Uzbekistan is maybe not yet a member of the OECD, but the exporting companies or the companies you export to are in OECD member countries, and you get automatically involved in these policies and procedures as well. Already mentioned independent programs like RAP and other similar standards build on hard and soft laws. And indeed, it's interesting to see that it's pretty much about how the standards work with these soft and hard laws. It's less about the principles, it's much more about how to implement a quality assurance system. I'll tell you a little bit more on the next slide of that. Also to mention, there are hybrid programs emerging. A very important one is the Green Button in Germany. That's also a GIZ, which is not an unfamiliar organization to Uzbekistan, a GIZ managed program. It's a meta certification, and it's very simple. The companies who are meta certified by the Green Button have it much easier to verify and to prove that they are living up to the expectations of the due diligence legislation. So also these programs are very important. If we look at RAP as a robust mandatory human rights due diligence tool, always important to see that we are completely independent third party. We don't have members. We are our own standard. We have a supervising board. We are completely non-profit, and we are not influenced by only any industrial party or even trade union. We extensively train our auditors, as Hong mentioned, that's third party, but we are responsible that the quality of the auditor is correct. In many cases, the audit process is as good as the auditor is trained. And I think we are very different from numerous other standard holders who pay less attention to training. Hong mentioned as well, we are APSCA certified. All our auditors have a certification and are registered. Again, here as well, RAP is reviewing the audit report themselves. There are other standard holders who work with platforms online where audit reports are uploaded immediately without any review. We make sure that quality assurance is in place. We notify and we provide correction action plans to facilities that you clearly know and understand if there are deficits, what needs to be done to pass next time the audit, and you earn your certification. Additional inspections will be done. All our all our audits are unannounced. That's also a difference with different programs. And it's adding all to the credibility of RAP. In this light, to mention, we are recognized under the Green Button 1.0 by the Green Button and the German government. And so we can say RAP is a tool of choice for exporting to both, to the US, the United States of America, and also Europe. As mentioned before, I'm based in Europe. I'm very keen on coming over together with an auditing partner to explain more about our program in Tashkent or wherever needed in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Gerwin, and thank you, Hong, and thank you, Mark, as well. To close things out, let me just say a couple of things to bring together all the remarks you've heard from myself and my colleagues so far. Really, RAP is the most comprehensive independent facility-based social compliance program out there. As you've seen, we have a very thorough internal review process, training of auditors, making sure that we are certifying facilities, not simply issuing an audit report that then has to be interpreted by somebody else. The professional staff we have in place, the engagement with outside organizations like APSCA, all of this make the program as robust and as comprehensive as it can possibly be. And that's why we have become the world's leading program, the largest independent such program out there, recognized by more buyers than any other. We take that responsibility and reputation very seriously, and we are always working to ensure consistency and uniformity in our program. We regularly review our requirements, our audit tool, and make sure that we are up to speed on any emerging issues or technologies or challenges, and are always adapting and adopting to local legal requirements. The program is built on the foundation of making sure that if you're a factory in Uzbekistan, the primary thing you have to make sure you do is obey Uzbekistani's law. You have to be starting at that point. So when the law changes there, automatically RAP requirements will change to make the new law be what is required. So those things are built into our program, and we make sure that they are regularly updated and implemented as the changes come through. As mentioned, we are designed to look at the supply chain holistically, right? We understand that there has to be a balance. If you want to have improved working conditions in a factory, the first thing you need is for that factory to be a profitable factory. Otherwise, any conversation about changing or improving becomes pointless if the factory is not going to be able to stay in business. So we understand that it is that balance of making sure that the workers are properly looked after and treated, and they do their jobs and responsibilities properly. Managers likewise, owners likewise, and buyers all have to work in harmony for this to be a successful long-term endeavor. We also recognize that social compliance intersects with other due diligence topics, and as mentioned, we have that additional value add proposition in our program that no other social compliance certification does, which is a principle that touches upon environment. We're not an environmental certification organization, but we do make sure that we are addressing that issue at the level of the worker. Plus, because the factories we work with are likely going to be exporting units, we have those export-oriented additional value-add propositions that Mark talked about, which for those of you willing or wishing to do business with Walmart is going to be especially helpful because a single RAP audit will take care of two Walmart requirements, social compliance and security, instead of needing to do two separate audits. If you had some other social compliance program, you would then have to do a security audit separately. All of this speaks to our process and the value of the certificate, and that's very good. We have to do what we do correctly. But in this day and age, when there is so much communication out there, for you to be seen as a credible player, for RAP to be seen as a program of depth and value, you also have to be a thought leader. You have to be out there engaged with the space, participating in conferences, issuing white papers, and we are indeed one of the main thought leaders in this space. We are constantly being asked to participate in various events, to be speakers, to be contributors to panels, to take part on other platforms and be part of the leadership of these organizations. APSCA, the big sort of initiative in the audit space over the last half decade, has emerged as the professional body for this space, and RAP has been there from the very beginning, and I actually have the privilege of being the chair of APSCA's board. It is that kind of leadership that we are able to show because of that strong program we have in place, and that in turn gives the certificate that much more value, that much more visibility. So, to conclude, let me look to the future a little bit. We're very excited that next month, RAP will be attending the series of events and the textile show in Tashkent in the middle of October. I would have loved to be there personally, but unfortunately previous commitments do not allow for that. But my colleague Hong Mei, whom you've met on this webinar, will be there on the ground. And as Gerwin mentioned, he's looking forward to an opportunity to be there himself as well, along with our monitoring partners, to start building the network and the ability and the connections to really drive this forward. It is obviously very gratifying to me, very heartening to see how closely industry and government and Chamber of Commerce are working together to continue to build up this industry in Uzbekistan and continue with due diligence in the textile and ready-made garments facilities and further upstream in your supply chain, because this is going to mean that there is going to be a confluence of efforts and energies and resources to really drive this industry forward. What we anticipate would be a practical path forward is to identify amongst the many factories you have in Uzbekistan a target group of facilities that are already exporting or looking to become players in that space, and begin with them the process to obtain RAP certification. We would love, of course, to see the day when all factories in Uzbekistan are there, but let's start with a group that has sort of the path already clear and begin the process there. Already mentioned that Hong will be there next month and begin following up in country with other training opportunities, other training partners. Gerwin will engage as well, and one of our monitoring partners will be part of that process, so that you have local resources. And that's what the model that we use at RAP. It doesn't make sense for everything to be managed out of headquarters. We can't send people there all the time. You want to build a resource platform on the ground with local auditors, local training partners, local consultants where needed in order to be effective and efficient and be viable for your industry. So what remains is to begin the registration process, get that target group lined up, and we will be excitedly tracking the progress they make and looking forward to seeing this certification take hold in Uzbekistan and the Uzbekistan supply chain take hold in the world stage as a sourcing destination of choice. Thank you once again to all the organizers, to the Chamber of Commerce, to the industry associations, and especially to the Embassy of Uzbekistan here in the United States. We really appreciate this opportunity. We look forward to further conversations and open the floor to questions from anybody in the audience. Spasiba.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you especially to you, Mr. Safarin. I hope we have interesting questions here. Are you ready? Let me ask my first question. Savolim, SEDEX auditidan o'tgan bo'lsa, RAP auditida o'tish davrida shu SEDEX inobatga olinadimi, yo'qmi?
Yes, well, that's an excellent question, and I'll answer. So the answer is it will definitely be very helpful. But let me say this honestly to you. If you already have a SEDEX audit, as long as you understand that what you have is an audit-only program, that is not a certificate, and therefore for buyers that require certifications, it will not be enough. You might still if you're dealing only with a buyer that is a SEDEX member and wants SEDEX, still be able to proceed, and quite frankly, you might not need RAP for that particular buyer. The question you have to ask yourself is, will you be able to satisfy more buyers with just a SEDEX? And the fact that the SEDEX is an audit-only program, what will that mean for the prospects of the facility looking to expand the number of buyers that they work with? So I don't want to suggest that it is not a good thing to have SEDEX. You know, as I said, if the buyer is the only one you're dealing with, that's fine. But to go back to your question, even though it's an audit-only program, it does still want you to set up certain systems that it will be checking. And so to that end, it is going to be very helpful, because that's the kind of work you would have had to do to achieve RAP certification as well. So if you've got that, you've already done that, the additional step, the additional value you get with RAP is that you will have a certificate, right? So that you will have to see if there are any gaps in the systems that don't meet the standard. They will have to be closed out, and you will have the certificate. And as mentioned, for example, you will also have the CDPAT element, which would help you with a Walmart or other buyer that wants security principles. So it will be helpful. The point that Mark was making in his presentation is that the different programs have different features. So it's important to understand what those features are. You might be in a position where you have enough. I'm not, you know, that's a wonderful thing. But there's more you would get with a RAP certificate, and it would be additional value for you. But any kind of program you've been through that puts in systems, that develops protocols, will be helpful, because that's ultimately what RAP will be looking for as well. What do you have with regards to systems and management processes? So great first question.
Thanks for the answer. As the ishtirokchilar, agar savollaringiz bo'lsa, birma-bir berishni boshlaymiz. Marhamat.
Assalomu alaykum. Bermoqchi bo'lgan savolim shuki, RAP bo'yicha endi BCI va Amfori BCI, keyin SEDEX bo'yicha hammamizdan manimcha ma'lumotimiz bor. Savolim shuki, RAP requirementlari bo'lsa, bizani O'zbekistonni qonunchiligi bor, keyin RAP talabi bor. Endi shunaqa holat keldi deylikki, RAP requirement'i qonunchiligimizda requirement bilan farq qilyapti. Shunaqa holatlarda qaysi biri inobatga olinadi?
Another great question. One of the beauties of the RAP program is, as I mentioned, that it is built on the foundation of local laws. So there are some international ceilings and floors that are established that set certain parameters that you cannot violate even by local law, and I'll give you an example in a minute. But most everything else is determined by actual legislation in the country of operations. So the RAP requirement is to make sure that the factory is paying a proper wage, right? That's the requirement. What that number is will be determined by local law. What local law says is the minimum wage is going to be what RAP is going to require. RAP is not going to set a number that doesn't take into account local law. So there's never going to be a conflict there. Right? Certain parameters, as I mentioned, are internationally set. So for example, when you talk about child labor, the ILO Convention 138 sets that as 14 years as the minimum age for developing countries. You cannot have a local law that sets it lower. But if you have a local law that sets it higher, again, RAP will adopt that. So the main answer to your question is that there's never going to be that kind of a conflict, because the program is designed around making sure that the foundation is meeting your local legal requirements.
Thank you.
Добрый день, большое спасибо за прекрасную презентацию подробную. Думаю, всем нам будет очень интересно это. Я бы хотела уточнить стоимость работы. Вы нам сказали о том, что $1195 стоит сбор регистрационный. И вот дальше, сколько обычно, в какую сумму вливаются все вот эти вот расходы по аудиту? И далее вы упомянули, что каждые 2 года нужно проходить дополнительный аудит. Опять же, тоже сколько это будет стоить, или это все будет в первоначальную сумму входить, мониторинг? Вот это вот поподробнее расскажите, пожалуйста, про ваш опыт.
Of course, we always get asked that question, and maybe we should have already put it in the slides itself. But yes, you're correct. 1,195 is the annual registration fee that a factory pays, and that's a flat fee, regardless of factory size. Although, as I mentioned, we are also certifying facilities that are lower tier. So if you are a mill, for example, or a dye house or any other supporting kind of facility, and you're a small sized facility, less than 200 employees, we do have a discounted rate for those facilities at half that, at 595. But for the vast majority of the factories out there, that will be 1195. And then the only other fee is the fee for the audit itself, which will depend on the size of the factory. Larger factories will need more audit time than smaller factories. And that will be the only other fee that the facilities pay. Typically, we are, depending on, again, location, audits tend to be in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 or something like that per audit day. And a typical wrap factory is going to need somewhere between 2 to 3 days. So the total fee for a facility to go through the wrap process and be audited is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $2,000, $2,500. That's generally what we see. It will depend, as I said, on specific factories, but that's a ballpark estimate for you. The fee is an annual fee because the process is meant to be revisited, revalidated every year, something that becomes more important as legislation now comes in that mandates buyers to revisit their supply chains with that periodicity. So the kind of laws that Gerben was talking about in the EU and Germany have in place annual inspection requirements. And so we are lined up with that. And it is going to be important that these be done regularly. And it becomes an annual practice.
А кто обычно платит за аудит? Покупатель или продавец?
Great question, and I think that might have been what Mark was going to comment on, so I'll pass the mic over to him.
Usually the facility pays RAP directly. The facility is then the customer or client of RAP, and it's the relationship that is established. The facility receives the audit report, and RAP reviews the audit report and issues the certification to the facility, and the facility shows the certification to the buyers. In addition, RAP will, with your permission as a facility, indicate on our website your certification status, and that permits buyers to look for RAP certified factories in Uzbekistan. And one other point I was going to make that we didn't cover in the slides in particular is you either are certified for RAP or you're not. But if you're not certified initially at the audit, doesn't mean you failed the test. In fact, what will happen is there will be a corrective action plan, and that'll be put in place by the auditor, and the facility will have an opportunity in time to make the corrections to the operations of the facility and to then resubmit for the RAP certification. And then you'll have a certification for 1 year from that date when it's issued. So we want all facilities to get up to that minimum standard. We'd love you to do more, but we want you all to get to the minimum, and we work with you within the model. Thank you.
Спасибо. А есть ли у вас планы по открытию офиса в Узбекистане?
Well, we would love to see enough factories engage with the RAP program in Uzbekistan to justify having an office there. Absolutely. When we first got started, obviously, we only had the headquarters office. And then when we saw how much of a presence we had in on the ground in various countries. We started making sure we had local resources, offices in all those places. You saw the map. So with your help, with your engagement, we will, as I said, love to see enough factories apply to RAP, become interested in RAP, that we have to say, hey, we need somebody on the ground permanently. We would love for that to happen.
Okay, thank you.
Sherzod aka, savolingiz bor?
Yes, last question, I think. In your opinion, as a textile manufacturer, I was wondering if our product's price will meet the US and European buyers' expectation because of the logistics expenses, because we will have to send by air cargo. What do you think about it?
Yes,
will our prices be higher than the other competitors?
Indeed, one challenge that Uzbekistan does face is being a double landlocked country. It is going to be a logistical challenge. The way to think about this, again, is holistically, right? You might have to deal with the prospect of a higher price to the buyer. So you have to understand that the overall value you present has to be that much more attractive. So if you want to be competitive, you will say, hey, we are RAP certified. We are a partner that's going to be a reliable, credible, socially responsible partner. You're going to get high quality from us, and you're going to get dependability from us. And this is what you're presenting as a value proposition. Most buyers really do take that into consideration because they understand that the risk of going to a cheaper product from some other country that has more logistical options, but does not give them that social compliance certificate, is a real risk. And it's not one that they're willing to tolerate because the overall cost to their reputation becomes much, much worse than any savings they might entail with the logistics option. So there is that holistic picture to take, and that much more reason to concentrate on your reputation as a sourcing destination to overcome whatever freight barriers there might be. I know Gerwin has some thoughts on this as well, so maybe we hear from him.
Yes, thank you, Avadis. Indeed, I like to add there that it's never wise to single out one component of a supply chain, in this instance, logistics. For sure, if we mirror this to the requirements, due diligence, law, and regulation in Europe, it's always the big picture. And the opportunity Uzbekistan is having to really to certify the full supply chain, and this is worth a lot, and then it's just a trade-off, a longer logistic line, although to Europe, unfortunately, we have currently the Ukraine war, but to my understanding is trucking from Uzbekistan to Western Europe, maybe 2 to 3 weeks maximum, which is absolutely, for a fully certified product, definitely an option. So there are different angles on how to review it, but of course, if we look at the strength of the Uzbekistan industry, that's definitely the natural fiber cotton. There are a lot of items where maybe the logistic lead time is playing a lower role. If we talk about basic t-shirts, if we talk about home textiles, I think there are a number of items where maybe at the end of the day a carbon footprint is important, but maybe not immediately how long the transportation takes. I would like to look always at the broader picture there.
Mark, anything you'd like to add to that?
One example you could look to is in Ethiopia, where they have the disadvantage of more challenging logistics, and both freight in and freight out take much longer and are expensive. For other reasons, Ethiopia is no longer the hotspot for apparel production, but in the last 5 years, they've definitely drove up the curve, overcame their logistics challenges, by identifying product types that would be suitable for longer lead times on delivery. And in many cases, that was more commoditized product, more cotton-based product, non-fashion product initially. You really do have to do the math to determine if your customer will bear the air freight, or if you have to find a land-ocean solution, and then what your lead times look like. But I'm sure many in this room and on this call have a much better understanding of the logistical challenge and opportunities. I did just want to make that reference. I've seen it work even where logistics is a disadvantage.
Okay, thank you. Aziz tadbirkorlarimiz, savollar bormi? Xo'p.
Avvalambor assalomu alaykum. Savolim shundan iboratki, VRAP sertifikati o'zbekistonlik tekstil ishlab chiqaruvchilari, tadbirkorlarga qanchalik jozibador? Ya'ni Yevropa va Shimoliy Janubiy Amerika qit'alarida bu sertifikatga talab qanchalik kuchli? Shundan kelib chiqqan holda tadbirkorlarni shu sertifikat olishga targ'ibot qilish, shunaqa ishlar bilan shug'ullanish effektivroq bo'ladi. Qanaqadir foiz soatnosheniyasida shu narsa bo'lsa, talab qanchaligi? Shu narsa ham muhim deb o'ylayman.
Thank you. That is fundamentally the question that we are hoping to answer with the presentation today. The answer is it is absolutely required that you have some kind of social compliance certification if you want to do business in Europe or with the United States or with Australia or with Japan, with really any Western market. The specific question about RAP, as I mentioned in the answer to the first question, we are the largest program. We're recognized by more buyers than any other program. But the reality is that there is no one program that's universally accepted. Right? So if you're dealing with only one buyer and they're telling you, we want you to use this program, or they're telling you, we don't use any program, we will inspect you, then that's the reality that you're faced with. Right? But if you want to be able to appease as many buyers as possible, both in Europe and in the US, with just one audit, one certificate, you're not going to get a better option than RAP. For some buyers that are the biggest in the world, you have already seen them listed: Walmart, Costco, Disney. All of these people will accept RAP. Some will actually require it, as Mark said. If you're going to do Kirkland signature apparel for Costco, you will have to get RAP. Right? So that's the value of the RAP certificate with regards to opening more doors than any other certificate will open for you. Right? But I caution you again, it is going to be a buyer-specific thing. So you might run into a buyer that says, we don't recognize any program. They are a dying breed, fortunately, but there are some programs still that are doing it wrong, doing it the old way. So be careful in those situations. But you will have the best option, the most number of recognized buyers. And don't forget, for people like Walmart, the RAP certificate will let you get rid of 2 audits with 1. You don't have to do a separate security audit. So that's the value proposition of a RAP certification that will hopefully prove to be beneficial to the Uzbek industry, both in Europe as well as in the United States.
Thank you. Yana savollar bormi?
Savollar bo'lsa bemalol bersanglar sal ular ham bilan aqlashadi. Marhamat. Олег, вопросы? Или как-то мы должны сказать, что если все понятно, берите Мақсад.
Здравствуйте. Зайтуна Насырова, ЗН «Стандарт». У меня 2 вопроса. Первый вопрос. Объясните, пожалуйста, что происходит, допустим, если какой-то пункт из ваших 12 принципов не отражается в местном законодательстве. Что берется за стандарт в данном случае?
I think that's a great question. Thank you. And I think Hong might be the one best suited to answer questions about the process and what happens when we have no local law or if there is a factory falling short of our requirements. Hong?
Yeah, thank you. So if you fail certain parts of the audit, you will have to address it. And certainly we can, help you understand what the non-compliances are. So one of the requirements we have for our third-party auditing firms is to have a closing meeting, right? During the closing meeting, they would illustrate what the problems are. You come up with the solution, and they can tell you whether that meets the RAP requirements or not. So in that regard, you use the solutions you come up with the help of the auditor to address the non-compliance. And once you address that non-compliance, then we will either do a desktop review or go back to the facility to do an on-site follow-up. So that's one of the ways that we address the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Han. As for the situation where there might be a lack of a law, it's very rare, but there are detail level scenarios. Health and safety is a good example where there's a lot of requirements, often tied to the law, right? But some countries have specific laws that require a certain number of fire extinguishers per square meter of space. Other countries do not. RAP will still require that there be fire extinguishers, and there are industry standards that will determine what would be a reasonable number to have in there. So you will see these requirements. When Hong was describing the process, the very first step in that process is the availability of a pre-audit self-assessment document that is meant to be a resource for the factories. It's not part of the audit. You don't have to pass the pre-assessment to go on to the audit. It's meant for you to be able to see what are the questions that the auditors will ask and what are they going to be looking for. So you can get a sense of where it is that you might need guidance, because there isn't a specific law that you already obtain guidance from. So hopefully that will be a resource. And that's, as I said, available on the website free of charge. You don't even have to register with RAP to get a copy of the pre-audit self-assessment.
Еще один вопрос, можно? Допустим, такая же ситуация. За последние 5 лет в нашем законодательстве происходит много изменений, улучшений. Допустим, компания не прошла аудит, не получила RAP Certification, и через несколько, скажем, недель происходит изменение в законодательстве, то есть оно смягчается. Имеет ли право компания как бы обратиться к вам и как бы повторно, что ли, провести аудит, но больше, скажем так, как сказать, получить это окошко, чтобы вы пересмотрели данный стандарт? Спасибо.
So the short answer to that is yes. If circumstances change, then we will revisit the conditions that the facility was checked against, of course. But it will depend very much on the specifics of the circumstances and what is it that's being changed, and certain. If something was the law at a point in time and the facility did not meet that law, then that facility will not be certified. If the law changes, then yes, you revisit and see if things have changed. But that doesn't change the fact that at that point in time, what happened was against the law. So there will be revisits like that, and the circumstances and the specific conditions will determine. As I said, some things are set ceilings, right? If Uzbekistan passes a law tomorrow that says the minimum age for working in a factory is 12, that's not going to be revisited, because there is that internationally set 14 as the floor. I'm not suggesting that that's what you would do, of course, but as an example of a law that would not be revisited. But most everything else, they change. Minimum wages change, other requirements change, so it is always going to be a living program, the RAP approach, and we will always check the facilities' practices against existing law as it is on the books at the time of the audit.
Thank you. Вопросы есть еще? Да, конечно.
Торгово-промышленная палата Республики Узбекистан. Учитывая то, что у нас сейчас в республике нету экспертов аудиторов по вашей профессии, РАП, куда может предприниматель обратиться в наших регионах, это я имею в виду в Средней Азии, чтобы получить этот сертификат побыстрее? Потому что возникает вопрос, у меня просто были предприниматели, которые задавали вопрос именно, где могут они получить в Средней Азии, чтобы было это и бюджетно, и побыстрее, где в регионах Средней Азии есть готовые аудиторы, к которым могут обратиться наши предприниматели. Спасибо большое.
That is an excellent question, and we are very much looking forward to engaging with our audit partners to develop resources locally in Central Asia. We are already positioning folks from Eastern Europe to mobilize if there is any immediate need. As mentioned in the next steps piece, Hong will be there next month, and we'll start liaising with local resources to develop local expertise, working with the chamber, with yourselves, and with the industry associations. Shortly thereafter, Gerwin expects to be on the ground himself, and ideally, our plan is to have a local partner at least, or one of our monitoring firms identified and engaged to provide auditors, to your point, so that it's not, cost prohibitive to have these audits, because we're not going to have them coming in from Germany to go do an audit in Uzbekistan. So we're working on setting that up, and I know we have already identified a partner, and I know we will be expecting to have Central Asian resources or Eastern European resources available. So if there is a factory, if that entrepreneur you were referring to is ready to go right now, we are certainly in a position to begin the process and get them going. So I don't know, Gerwin, if you want to add anything to that?
Yes, what I can add, that we have some big partners in Europe where we are working with. One of them is TUV Rhineland. And as far as I understand, I have an auditor based in Serbia, speaking Russian, who might be available to conduct also audits in Uzbekistan. We have a number of resources, and we are building up actually this network, and we will follow up in this and have more to mention in the very near future.
And related to the question earlier about whether RAP might want an office locally, I can tell you from experience that if there are enough factories that are in an audit program, then the audit firms will themselves look for ways to put resources on the ground. So as Mark mentioned, even though now they have fallen out of favor, when Ethiopia was booming 5, 6, 7 years ago, before that there were no auditors locally. But once the factory base built up, people actually had enough demand for the firms to have local auditors. So not even coming from Central Asia in the broad sense, but housed in Uzbekistan itself, if the base for factories is big enough to justify it.
Thank you. Thank you. Да, конечно.
Bunyadkar Textile. My name is Akhror. Thank you for informative and such a useful webinar. So my question is, so we've seen in interrelated graphic that RAP does the third-party audit and provide the certification, but there's no any consulting and marketing services. For example, in 2022, you mentioned that already 3,200 companies already got the audit certifications, which means we are already in a competitive market in US. So most of us in Uzbekistan, after getting the certification, do experience the problems with the marketing. So does the WRAP provides the consulting services, or we should approach next program or next companies? So practically, we do experience problems because of time difference, because of cultural difference, because of modeling, and so on. So what do you suggest as a next step after getting certification? Thank you.
Another really excellent question. Thank you for that. Yes, to be very clear, WRAP does not provide any consulting services, and you can understand, I'm sure, why that has to be the case, right? We have to be independent. We're certifying facilities. We cannot possibly set up a system and then come to grade whether that system was a good system or not. So we have to be independent of the facility itself, and so we directly do not provide consulting services. But we understand that certain facilities would benefit from that, and so we are able to do broad-based training, not setting up systems in individual facilities, but engaging with the chamber, for example, to do a webinar on what good systems look like. Right? We can do that. We can also engage with the local organization and maybe train them in the sort of systems and protocols that are required for those guys then to potentially be resources for the factory. So there are scenarios that can help as a resource, although WRAP cannot directly do any consulting. These are the kinds of things that Hong will be happy to elaborate on when she's on the ground next month. On the other end of the spectrum, with regards to marketing services and that, again, WRAP has to be very careful to stay neutral. We're not in the supply chain. We don't buy, we don't sell. But as Mark mentioned earlier, we do promote the fact that these factories in our system are socially responsible. We're proud of that, and we share that. And so if you go to our website, you can see the list of factories that are WRAP certified. When buyers ask us, who do you have that's certified in Uzbekistan or in, a given location, we're happy to share that information. We're happy to connect them to the buyers, to the factories in country if the factories are willing to do that. So we are a resource in that sense that you can benefit from our network and our ability to promote the fact that you're WRAP certified. But it is going to be important for your industry to, as you said, approach other organizations and engage through trade shows, for example, to promote your presence in large international events, whether in the US or Europe or other parts of the world, for buyers to directly see the product themselves and have the ability to appreciate the craftsmanship and quality of your facilities. So there are things that industry has to do to promote, to market, that go over and above just getting WRAP certified, but that is an important step in the process, and that can in itself be a ways to promote your facilities. Mark, I think you had some comments you wanted to add to that as well.
Yes, and you hit on it, Abadiz. In Hong's visit, she can share with you her knowledge and experience of the various trade shows in the industry. I'm sure you're aware of some of these, but if you're not, WRAP attends a number of the trade shows and provides thought leadership and marketing of the WRAP program. But also we can provide some insight and some connections to the different trade shows if they are of interest to you in promoting the Uzbek industry.
Great. I guess our today's meeting is over. And thanks again for joining us. And now we know all about WRAP. And we would be happy, and textile entrepreneurs would be happy to meet you in October. Welcome to Uzbekistan. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. We really appreciated everyone taking so much time to learn about WRAP, and we are looking forward to learning more about Uzbekistan and the industry, and to working with you in promoting this wonderful group and leading to success for your associations and your entrepreneurs. I know Hong is excited to be there next month. Erwin will follow shortly, and I look forward to an opportunity to be there myself, and I know Mark would love that too. So thank you for the time, thank you for this engagement and for the excellent questions, and we are available to answer any further follow-up that will come up, and we look forward to working with you in the near future.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Thank you very much.
Can you hold for a couple seconds? I have a question is coming up.
Okay.
Да.
Где они?
Okay. Sorry, they left. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.